Welcome to Chills with Chas. We'll be continuing the Haunted Heartland series with the stories The Two House Haunting and the Macomb Poltergeist. Let's get into it. Gertrude Mayers decided against telling her husband about that strange night. He would probably think her silly and emotional, but the man had returned. She thought it must be a man, for the steps were heavy. Again, stopping just outside her locked bedroom door. At last the torment became too much. She decided to confront the nightly walker, whatever or whoever he was. She sat up in bed waiting, the coverlet pulled to her chin. The clock chimed. 10 o'clock. 10:30. Then the steps began as always, from the front door, across the front hall, up the stairs to the very threshold of her bedroom. She jumped out of bed and threw open the door. Nothing was there. The year was 1935. An end to the Great Depression was not in sight for a young, newly married couple in their late 20s. Gertrude and Raymond Mayers considered themselves fortunate to have a comfortable, though modest, home in Springfield, in a development where all the houses looked alike. In fact, their dwelling exactly mirrored the one next door. Gertrude was an educated woman, a high school teacher with ambitions as a writer. She didn't want to admit to herself, let alone her husband, that she had been bothered by the night she spent alone while he was working late shifts as a printer. During the summer, they had moved in as newlyweds. She had been able to open the windows. Bird songs and traffic noises enlivened the empty evenings. But now it was late fall, and she felt another presence in the house. The unseen tenant lurking just beyond the shadows whose footsteps punctured the night. At first, even as the footsteps continued, she had been able to convince herself that her imagination had the upper hand. Night after night, Gertrude Mayers bravely flung open her bedroom door at the moment whatever was out there vanished, the footsteps moving away down the hallway. As fall merged into winter, she had little relief from the night walker. Unnervingly, he didn't come every night, but when he did come, it was always at 10:30 p.m. Unbeknown to his wife, Raymond Mayers had also heard mysterious sounds as the weather grew colder. He assumed it was Gertrude. He usually returned home from work around 3:30 in the morning and went to the basement to stoke the coal furnace before going to bed. Often he heard someone moving around on the first floor. After several days, he finally asked his wife what she was doing prowling around in the middle of the night. That was when they discussed their similar experiences. Raymond also heard footsteps during the day after Gertrude left for her teaching job, but neither one of them ever saw anything, and they couldn't decide what the intruder was after. The nightly strolls seemed almost ritualistic, seldom varying in routine or duration. Always from the front door, up the stairs, into the bedroom door, but never did anything come through the door. Who was the intruder? A possible answer came in the spring when Gertrude could again be comforted by human and animal noises drifting through the open window. The couple decided to plant a garden, and in the process first met their neighbor from the identical house next door, a grandmother and her young grandson. As neighbors often do, They chatted about their families and houses. That's when the Mayers mentioned their nocturnal rambler. The neighbor revealed that she too had heard mysterious footsteps. Furthermore, she explained that the two houses had originally been a single dwelling, a sort of duplex. For some reason, after the suicide of the original owner, the duplex had been divided into two separate dwellings, moved some distance apart. They decided the ghostly steps must belong to the former owner, only he couldn't decide which half of the house he belonged in. The haunting continued in both the houses. Gertrude and Raymond Mayers grew used to it, although never enough to feel completely at ease. Alright, now we're on to our next story. The Macomb Poltergeist. Her name was Wynette, and she was a disturbed child who lived with her father, uncle, and aunt, and their 3 children on a family farm near Macomb, Illinois, in the year 1948. Max Willie, the uncle, owned the farm. An only child, the little girl had been awarded to her father when her parents divorced. She hated the farm and wished desperately to live elsewhere. Other children might have run away, purposely failed their school studies, or taken to petty mischief, but not Wynette. Through some mysterious psychic force, she started fires. Investigators called it one of the most amazing stories of fire poltergeist ever recorded. The attacks started with a sudden blooming of brown spots on the farmhouse's wallpaper, the size of a dime at first. They spread into even wider circles of heat. Witnesses claimed they reached the temperature in excess of 400 degrees. Never enough to burst into flame, though. Smoke curled up from smudges. The days the brown spots polka dotted the wallpaper, or for days, while neighbors stood guard with buckets and hoses to put out any fires. They would wet each spot as it appeared until there were so many that they couldn't keep up. The local paper reported the strange goings-on at the Willie farm, and it didn't take long for experts to offer opinions on the case. An Air Force technician cited the presence of high-frequency radio waves or radioactivity. He explained that short radio waves have been known to trigger flash bulbs into going off, but no other farms reported the problem, and it seemed improbable that the radio waves would have been so concentrated as to affect only the Willies. Another expert suggested that the combustible gases were accumulating in the house and causing the phenomena, but his theory failed to fit all the circumstances either. The fires eventually spread to any combustible material in the house. The family found singe marks on the curtains, bed sheets, clothing, and various paper products. On occasions, things started smoldering before everyone's disbelieving eyes. Young Wynette became the focus of the investigation. During the 3rd week of the incendiary disturbances, the authorities eventually persuaded her to sign a confession stating that she had started them. Witnesses who had observed fires starting in several parts of the house simultaneously did not see how Wynette could be guilty unless she could be in 2 places at once, or had several co-conspirators. but others cited evidence that children, especially unhappy children, may trigger poltergeist activities unconsciously. It is unusual, however, for a poltergeist, which more commonly manifests itself through the sudden movement of furniture, voices, noises, or in some cases possessions of a person, to resort to the setting of fires. In fact, a fire poltergeist is extremely rare. One expert, Vincent Gaddis, suggested that some kind of psychological mechanism working through a frustrated or angry person can concentrate psychic kinetic energy normally stored in the human body to control electrical forces in the atmosphere and thus produce small fires such as those in the Willie household. As unbelievable as this explanation may sound, there are dozens of recorded cases of objects or human beings bursting into flame for no apparent reason, often leaving unscorched normal combustible items near the consumed object. In the Willie case, the extraordinary number of fires over a relatively short span of time has never been satisfactorily explained. Neither have the destructive power of human anger to amply mirrored in the fierce manifestation that scorched the Macomb farmhouse. Alright, that's the end of that. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you next time.